Today I'm on UFC 5 and I'll be competing against ChatGPT in a game of The Ultimate Fighter. If you don't know, The Ultimate Fighter is a reality TV show that literally saved the UFC with its very first season, and nowadays it's almost unwatchable. How the show works in real life is 16 fighters, 8 per weight class, are first put through tests in front of their UFC star coaches. The coaches then pick their teams and later pick the fight matchups for them. Every contestant has to fight and win the fight their coach chooses for them to make it to the semifinals. From there, the coaches and Dana White come up with the semifinal matchups. Then the finalists fight on a UFC card for a 6-figure UFC contract. Meanwhile, the fighters have to live together in the same house for 40 days with no forms of communication with the outside world. They spend most of their days training together in preparation for the fights they have planned on the show. If they win their fights, they would continue competing for a contract with the UFC in the next round. If they were to lose their fight, they are eliminated from the competition. So back in the day, they'd come back to the house, consume deadly amounts of alcohol, and try to fight someone. Nowadays, they just cry in front of a content creator ring light. So how will we do this in UFC 5? For starters, to copy the current season format of The Ultimate Fighter, I started off with generating a random country that each fighter will be from. I also came to ChatGPT and asked for random names of men from each country involved. Then to give my selection of fighters as much diversity as possible, I then spun random wheel of names to decide each fighter's attributes, including height, weight, skin color, fighting style, fighter type, body type, stance, age, and posture. I took all of this information and put it into the game and created all 16 of the fighters one by one. And lastly, to give myself and ChatGPT an idea of who we should pick to be on our team, I went ahead and had all 16 tough contestants fight 8 random fighters of varying fighting styles and abilities, while giving the tough fighters slight advantages to showcase their abilities and to guarantee realistic fighting records for the show. So for the welterweight division, first we have Karim Amar from Algeria. He went 7-0-1 with 3 submission victories and 2 TKOs. His fighting style is Jiu-Jitsu Shark and his posture is Nate Diaz. Algeria doesn't exist in this game, so I turned him into an illegal immigrant in the UAE, but they still won't show his flag. Next, we have Azamat Isakov from Kyrgyzstan. His likeness is heavily based off a real-life fighter from that country whose name I can't pronounce, but I'm sure you've seen him before since it looks like he was born 5,000 years ago. Azamat went 5-3 with 3 knockouts and is a pressure boxer. From Australia, we have Liam Mitchell. He is the shortest fighter of the welterweights at 5'9". He is an MMA virtuoso who went 5-3 with 1 TKO. Next is Napat Phumchai from Thailand. He's got a solid frame. He's a sniper kickboxer, and that gave him the only welterweight perfect record of 8-0 with 3 knockouts. We've got Roman Petrenko from Ukraine. When he's not fighting in the war, he's fighting in the cage. He's 5-3, but all 5 of his wins are by way of knockout. From Venezuela, we have the religious man Ernesto Hernandez. He is a razor kickboxer who went 6-1-1 with 4 knockouts. From Tuvalu, we have Micah Talakai. He is the tallest welterweight and a boxer showboat, but that only brought him to a record of 4-4. And lastly, from Nigeria, we have Jide Adebayo, who went 6-2 with 4 knockouts. And for the heavyweight division, first up is 6'5", 247 pounds, Javier Torres from Panama. He is a wrestling smasher who went 8-0 with 4 TKOs and 1 submission. From Serbia, we have Nikola Petrovic. He's 6'2", 260, but he hides the weight well. He went 4-3-1 with 3 knockouts, and his style is MMA Engine. From China, we have another undefeated fighter in Wei Zhang. He is 6'5", 262 pounds. His fighting style is boxing showboat, and he did a lot of that. Not only did he go 8-0 with 8 knockouts in his preliminary fights, but he also used an ancient Chinese secret to make himself disappear midway through his fight, which left his opponent fighting a ghost. From South Korea is the razor kickboxer Min Jae Kim. He is the shortest of the heavyweights at 5'10", 230 pounds, but still he went a solid 6-2 with 5 TKOs. From Georgia, we have 6'3" Georgi Gogoladze. His fighting style is MMA top dog, and he went a pretty solid 7-1 with 6 knockouts. From Slovenia is Luka Novak, who is an MMA virtuoso. He's an odd combination of 5'11", 257 pounds, but clearly that's all muscle. He went 6-1-1 with 4 TKOs. From Spain is an absolute behemoth. It is 6'5", 255 pounds, Alejandro Martinez. If that isn't scary enough, he's also a jiu-jitsu shark. He went 7-1 with 4 knockouts. And for our last fighter, fighting out of Tampa, Florida, USA, we've got the tallest fighter on the show, 6'6", 230 pounds, Malik Anderson. He is the third fighter to go undefeated with an 8-0 record, including 7 knockouts. I had to explain this whole process in the form of an essay to ChatGPT to make sure I covered every aspect of the game, and surprisingly, it grasped this Declaration of Independence I sent it immediately. But interestingly, when I asked it to flip a coin, it took longer to come back with an answer. I thought I was about to be swindled and I was ready to retaliate by forcing it to digest every episode of Friends in Mandarin, but I actually won the coin toss. I now have control of the game and can choose to either pick the first fighter from each weight class or to pick the first fight matchup. And I'm not a hoe, I'm picking the first fighter. I thought about it long and hard, but I'm going with Javier Torres for my first pick. He's undefeated and a wrestler, which tends to be overpowered in this game, and I don't plan on losing to a computer. It was ChatGPT's turn, who I'm just gonna rename Chad from this point on. And even though Chad has the exact same data that I have, he chose Nikola Petrovic, who has the worst record of all the heavyweights. Now, I could have taken advantage of Chad for not knowing how to read a spreadsheet, but I gave him a second chance and made sure he understood the information I sent him. And with his repick, he took Wei Zhang from none other than China. Now, I had to ask, who are you working for? Do you like that he's from China? And Chad gave me a very defensive answer, saying it's only worried about the fighting details. He's not working for anyone. And oddly enough, it was the perfect time for him to say, sorry, you've reached your ChatGPT 4.0 limit for the day. Likely story. I gave $20 to the Chinese Communist Party and moved on, but I've got my eye on you, Chad. For my next pick, I'll go with my country's fighter, Malik Anderson. For Chad's next pick, he chose Luka Novak. This next pick was tough, but I'm going to stick with the trend of picking the big boys here, and I'll be taking Alejandro Martinez for my third pick. He's looking like a steal here, and I've now taken both the ground game fighters in this division. But Chad came back with a nice pick of his own and picked the 7-1 Georgi Gogoladze. And for my last pick, I took Min Jae Kim of South Korea, which will leave Chad with Nikola Petrovic of Serbia. For the welterweight division, I have the first pick again, and I'll be taking the only undefeated fighter in this division, Napat Phomchai of Thailand. I've now taken the last 2 Asian men off the board, and in a fit of rage, Chad acted out and tried to select Hiroto Suzuki. And as far as I know, this is just some random Asian guy because that's not a fighter on this list. Later on, I looked up that name, and it turns out it's an anime character on the show The Day I Became God. Chad is either talking mad shit, telling me he's becoming a god, or he's got his mind in the gutter thinking of hentai porn, and I don't know which is worse. Moving on, for Chad's first welterweight pick, he's taken 7-0-1 Kareem Amar. For my second pick, I took Jide Adebayo, who's 6-2 with a promising 6'2" frame. Chad then threw a curveball at me and picked Liam Mitchell, who had one of the least impressive records remaining. For my third pick, I took Roman Petrenko, since all 5 of his wins are by way of knockout, which might come in handy. Chad then took Azamat Isakov, and for my last pick, I did pretty well for myself. I landed 6-1-1 Ernesto Hernandez, which left Chad with Micah Talakai. So here's a look at the teams. I'd say I dominated this draft between my advantages in size and winning records, but you never know. Chad also now has control of the game and gets to decide the first fight. And for his first fight selection, he really whipped it out on me on this one. He's gonna have his top pick, welterweight Kareem Amar, take on my second pick, Jide Adebayo, which is kind of a matchup nightmare for me. Another aspect of the game is that there's 150 fighting styles to choose from for your fighter to fight like in their matchup. I thought that would be a further way to involve coaching controls, but Chad never bought into this. He always just went with the default fighting style. I, for one, did not. Since Kareem Amar is a ground game heavy fighter, I decided to have Adebayo fight like Sean O'Malley to make him fight from a distance and avoid the takedowns. We get underway here for our first fight, and Jide is taken down in the first 30 seconds. Kareem works this man on the ground, but a few minutes later, Jide is able to get back up and we can still win this round. Jide was even able to land a few nice right hands. Kareem can't compete with us on the feet. All we have to do is avoid the takedown, and he got it. Okay, all we have to do now is survive the round. It's almost over. Just survive. Kareem starts going for the choke with about 20 seconds left, but come on, you can do anything for 20 seconds. Just fight it. But at the buzzer, Jide taps. What a pussy. I can't believe it. Great job, Jide. Not only does Chad keep control of the game, but now your family's staying in Africa for a few more generations. I hope you're happy. Just to clarify how this works from here, Jide is eliminated permanently and Kareem is moving on to the next round and will not fight again until then. I went back to ChatGPT and told Chad the results. He now gets to select the next fight, which will be in the heavyweight division, and he's taken his #1 pick again in having him take on Min Jae Kim, my last pick. Zhang is 7 inches taller and 32 pounds heavier, so I don't want Kim standing with him, so I went ahead and used Kamaru Usman's fighting style, which can be broken. Our best chance here, which is slim, is to keep this fight on the ground and test Zhang's ground game. Zhang got the first stunning shot early in the fight with an axe kick, but Kim came back with a stunning combo of his own. He followed that up with some ground control time, and I think Kim might have taken that first round. In the second, we didn't get any stuns, but he had plenty of takedowns. Zhang did a great job himself limiting the damage off his back throughout the round, but after a late reversal, he did some real damage on top, and I think he took back that second round and no longer needs a knockout. In the third round, his axe kick landed again and he stunned Kim again with a head kick. Kim went for more takedowns, but nothing came of it. He tried one late submission, but it didn't work. The takedowns were a good try. It stopped Kim from being knocked out. We're gonna lose that fight by decision, but that's not surprising. That was his first pick against our last pick. I'm proud of Min Jae Kim. He did his best. I told Chad the news that he's up 2-0, and for his next fight selection, he's gonna have Liam Mitchell fight Roman Petrenko. That's his second pick versus my third pick, but I still would have taken Roman first anyway. So this is the first time we can actually win a fight, and I'm not going to interfere from here. So he'll be fighting with his default style. And finally, one of my guys was actually succeeding in life. Roman had him stunned in the first. He threw him to the mat as well. He was almost armbarred, but it's more than fair to say that Roman won that first round. He came out hot in the second again with an immediate takedown. He then followed that up with a stun knockdown combo. He hit him with an overhand and a head kick. Liam is still conscious somehow. He gets back up just to be thrown down again, but now Roman is gassed. Meanwhile, Liam is actually doing pretty fine in his stamina and head health. So he goes on to stun Roman 3 separate times in the round. Roman should still have won rounds 1 and 2, but now he's in survival mode. And in the third, he is so tired that he doesn't survive. Liam dominates this man on the feet and sends him to the Shadow Realm, and that makes me 0 for 3 so far in these fights, including this one, which Roman should have won. How do you fight a war for the past few years while also training MMA and still show up in bad shape? No more US dollars for you, buddy. I had to let Chad know again. He's won for the 3rd time in a row, and he gets to decide the 4th fight. He picked Giorgi Gogoladze to fight Alejandro Martinez. My odds are better than ever. These are both our 3rd picks, but I even selected Alejandro over Giorgi myself. My fighter has every physical advantage going into this, and I don't even want to talk about this one. We were robbed by a split decision. Round 1, we beat him in every category. That goes to Alejandro. Round 2, the only difference is Giorgi had a stun. Alejandro had 5 more significant strikes, but I still understand Giorgi getting a slight edge here. Round 3 though, this is the robbery. They were even in stuns. Giorgi had 1 more significant strike. Alejandro had 3 more total strikes, 1 more takedown, and a few more seconds of control time. Yet they gave that round to Giorgi. What the fuck? I am now 0 for 4 against these cheating AI bastards, but Chad is now more confident than ever, and he has already gone ahead and matched up our last picks in the welterweight division. However, Ernesto was a steal for me. He went 6-1-1 with 4 TKOs. Mike, on the other hand, went 4-4 even at 6'3". Turns out Ernesto is a very odd fighter. He starts off with this flying kick that lands. He goes back to it, but ends up on his back. Yet he's in no rush to get up. He even invites Micah to join him. He accepts some basic body shots, gets a leg over his neck, and he takes the top position. Micah escapes and gets back up. Still, Ernesto doesn't want to get back up. He stays on his back and waits for him. Keep in mind, Ernesto is a kickboxer, so he's going to control most of this first round and win that round easily. And in the second, he catches Micah with another flying head kick, which stuns him. That'll be the only stun of the fight, and Ernesto continues to be the Hoist Gracie of kickboxers, and he gave me my first victory so far by decision. I'm now in control of the fight selections, but by now, most of the fighters are off the board. My next selection has to be at heavyweight, and I'm going to take Javier Torres and put him up against Luka Novak. My thought process here is that for some reason, the virtuoso fighting types are 4.5 stars, so I want my best guy to take him on and leave Nikola Petrovic, their weakest fighter, with Malik Anderson. And Javier looked unstoppable in his first round fight. He came into this fight 6 inches taller, which didn't hurt, but he didn't need it. He took Luka down at will, and he made good use of his ground control time. He just bullied him down there. He continuously got full mount and just teed off on his face until he and Herb Dean have seen enough. The next 2 fights are already set since 2 men per weight class haven't fought yet. First up in the welterweight division is Azamat Isakov versus Napat Fumchai. Azamat is a pressure boxer and Napat is a sniper kickboxer. For Chad and I, this created a pretty fair fight. These fighters had no intentions of hitting the mat, they just hit each other. Napat won the first round by volume. Napat won the second round as well with a checked leg kick, multiple stuns, and he opened up a nasty cut or two on Azamat's face. Although Azamat was still well in this fight and even got his first stun in at the end of the second. The third round was an absolute brawl. The first half of the third round still belonged to Napat. He kept landing overhand rights which stunned and knocked down Azamat, but then Azamat came back at him with a stunning front kick, and his leg kicks were starting to add up. These two kept standing face to face hurting each other, but the doctor was called in with 2 minutes to go. He's here for Azamat, and yeah, that makes perfect sense after getting a closer look at his face. The fight's back on. Azamat stuns Napat. Azamat starts cracking his leg again, and the doctor is back already. This fight could be over already, but he's here for Napat. He can't see out of his right eye, but it's not like he had 20/20 vision in the first place. He's from Thailand. They get back to it, and Napat is just in survival mode. Azamat does all the damage at the end of this fight and nearly knocks out Napat at the buzzer. But the number 1 overall pick from the welterweights, Napat Phomchai, will move on, but just barely. And in the last fight of the first round, Chad's Nikola Petrovic is taking on my second pick from the heavyweights, Malik Anderson. Malik had a pretty significant size advantage going into this fight, and he used it well. He did an excellent job point fighting from a distance and was clearly up 2-0 heading into the third. He cruised in the third, which ended up being fine. His chin was slightly tested, but he won this fight by unanimous decision. It's now time for the semifinals. How it works from here is typically the coaches and fighters tell Dana White who they want to fight. Dana considers their input, but ultimately would make the final decision. So I decided to talk to Chad about it. Now, even though I kept specifically telling Chad to not be a pushover and to do what's best for him and his fighters, he would have done whatever I said. So I let him pick half of the fights and I picked the other half. In the welterweight division, I decided to have our own guys fight each other to guarantee that we each have at least one fighter in the finals. So up first will be Napat Phomchai versus Ernesto Hernandez. The following fight in the heavyweight division, which was Chad's idea, will be Javier Torres versus Georgi Gogoladze. The second welterweight fight will be both of Chad's fighters. Liam Mitchell will face Kareem Amar. And lastly, we will have a solid matchup between Malik Anderson and Wei Zhang in the second heavyweight semifinal. In the first semifinal fight between my number 1 pick and my last pick, it was surprisingly even. Although it turned out Napat was up 2-0 on the scorecards heading into the third. But Ernesto, the kickboxer, shows off his ground game once again. He gets an armbar and he quickly made Napat tap. And now Ernesto, my last pick, will be the fighter that will represent me in the welterweight finals. Georgi versus Javier was not the close fight I expected it to be. Javier still had the height advantage, but not nearly as much compared to his first round fight. But Javier was just hitting on all cylinders. He was even winning the fight on the feet early on, which is a bad sign for Georgi of Georgia. Because on top of that, Javier could get takedowns pretty much whenever he felt like it. Georgi had a few moments in the second where it looked like he was in this fight, but Javier was fine. He more than made up for his mistakes with fully mounted ground and pound. He won this fight unanimously 30-27. The second welterweight fight between Liam Mitchell and Kareem Amar was an odd one. Kareem Amar has been almost exclusively a ground game fighter so far. I changed nothing, and yet his style changed completely. He went 1 for 6 on his takedowns, which didn't help, but he pretty much accepted this fight on the feet, and surprisingly, he still won the fight. And for the last semifinal fight, we have the best heavyweight fight so far. Chad's top pick, Wei Zhang, will take on my second pick, Malik Anderson. Again, I don't know what's going on with Chad's fighters, but they keep changing their fighting style on their own. Wei Zhang, the showboat boxer, went for 19 takedown attempts in this fight. And because neither of these guys have much ground game, there wasn't much to judge their first round off of. And Zhang ended up being the only one to land a stunning punch in the first, so that alone would give the first round to Zhang. He has my guy confused, but Malik came out in the second and started to land some of his kicks. It's not really hurting Zhang yet, but the damage is adding up. Malik handled his takedown game perfectly, and this was looking like an even fight heading into round 3 until Zhang stunned Malik again with 15 seconds left in the round. Zhang's left really got going in the third. He stunned Malik early and followed that up with the first knockdown of the fight. But with 2 minutes to go, Malik landed a stunning head kick. I think the left hook stunned him here as well, but he just couldn't land another big blow after spamming buttons. And Wang turned into Prime Ray Lewis, got him to the mat, started the head and arm, turned it into a rear naked, and Malik quickly tapped. So for the welterweight final fight, we have from Team ChatGPT, Kareem Amar versus Ernesto Hernandez from Team Frosti. Ernesto is the last man I expected to be here, but this division hasn't been kind to me, so I'm just happy to have someone here at all. He got started off with his jumping attacks, which left him on his back, but he said, you know what, that's fine, I'll just wait here. After getting up, he landed the first stunning strike of the fight, but simultaneously had his leg damaged. Then while trying to return the leg kick, he was stunned by the left and is now behind in the round. They then went back and forth with their takedowns and ground control, but on the feet, Ernesto evened it up with a checked leg kick. He followed that up with a flying knee to his imagination, so that's going to be a close first round. At the start of the second round, Ernesto went for a dirty little flying head kick, and then he did it again, but neither would land. Kareem then stunned Ernesto on his third flying head kick in 30 seconds, but Ernesto finally did something positive on the ground with full mount ground and pound. But this fighting style is a real gamble for him and starting to be his downfall. He's draining his energy while also doing no damage, and he keeps getting rocked for trying it. He definitely lost a second, but in the third he started off strong with a question mark kick that stunned Kareem, but for the rest of the round he got his leg beat up, his chin beat up, and his temple was beat up. It seems like I ended up with a welterweight Johnny Walker in the finals, and that's not gonna get it done. Kareem Amar won this fight, the division, and Team ChatGPT now has the upper hand. But I am 1,000 times more confident in my next fighter's ability. We've got Panama's Javier Torres facing China's Wei Zhang. We weren't off to a great start. Zhang was working the body and somehow snuck in a stunning uppercut. He ended up tossing Javier Torres, but that's where Javier wants to be, so I don't mind this. But even then, having a 260-pound man full mount you for a minute straight is probably not where you want to be, so Javier's gonna wisely get up. And Wei Zhang is doing it again. As a showboat boxer, he is dominating my smasher wrestler at his own game. He can't be touched down there. Damage wise, Javier is fine, but he lost that round. The second round was much better for Team Frosti. Javier got a super early takedown, did some very solid ground and pound, and he ended up keeping the dominant position for about 3 minutes. The rest of the round consisted of a few more Javier takedowns, so this fight is going to be even heading into round 3. In the first 10 seconds of round 3, Javier got his takedown, but within another 30 seconds, Zhang took the top position. Torres reversed him again and got his back. He started the rear naked, but Zhang got out of it and is now on top. They get back to the feet and Zhang lands a stunning axe kick out of nowhere. Javier tries trading with Zhang on the feet, but he's getting pieced up. He's stunned. Zhang keeps pursuing. He knocks him down. He goes for the finish, but Torres survives. And he fought through that just for Zhang to take him down again. Zhang doesn't even need full mount to do damage. Javier has his hands up in shock. He's getting pelted right now. They get back up. They go toe-to-toe on the feet. Javier actually stuns him here, but of course Zhang capitalizes on this, and while backing up, he tries to do an off-the-cage Superman punch. Javier ends up in full mount with a minute left, and he needs to do some damage quickly or he is going to lose his fight. He postures up and has a few opportunities to put Zhang away, but he can't do it. Javier swings to the very end, but Wei Zhang is just too much to handle. Wei Zhang won the fight, the heavyweight division, and Team ChatGPT has beaten me in both divisions. This isn't my proudest moment, but as a reward to ChatGPT, he earned the right to come up with the outro. We had to work on it, but here's the best he came up with. Hey everyone, you just caught our UFC 5 showdown. Big thanks to Frosti for setting it up. The fights were wild. If you liked it, cool. Hit that like button. Maybe subscribe and turn on notifications if you want. No big deal. Stay chill and catch you next time. Peace.